The room was already quiet when the old man opened his eyes. Not suddenly. Not with thought. They simply opened, as if they had never fully closed. The window beside him stood slightly open. A thin curtain moved slowly, barely noticeable, rising and falling with the night air. It made no sound. The old man sat in his chair, hands resting loosely on his knees. He had been sitting there for a long time. How long did not matter. Time felt distant in this room. The lamp beside him glowed softly. Not bright, not dim, just enough to make the shadows gentle instead of sharp. The light did not move. It stayed exactly where it was. Outside the window, the night remained still. No cars, no voices, no sudden sounds. Only the slow, steady presence of darkness. The old man breathed quietly. In, out! Each breath slow, unhurried, as if it had nowhere else to be. The chair supported him without pressure. The floor beneath felt steady and familiar. Nothing shifted. Nothing demanded attention. The curtain moved again. Just slightly, as if the night itself were breathing. The old man did not look at the clock. He did not need to. The night had its own rhythm, and he followed it without effort. His eyes rested gently on the window, though he was not really looking at anything. Not outside, not inside, just resting. The house around him felt settled. Every wall, every corner, as if it had decided to remain exactly as it was for the rest of the night. The old man's shoulders were relaxed. His jaw was loose. There was no tension left to release. The air moved slowly across the room, cool but comfortable. It touched his face and passed on without asking for attention. Breath continued. In, out! The pause between breaths grew soft and wide. The lamp hummed faintly, almost imperceptible. A sound so quiet it blended into the silence itself. The old man remained still. Not waiting. Not thinking. Just present. The night outside did not change. The room did not change. And the old man, sitting by the quiet window, allowed everything to stay exactly as it was. Nothing needed to happen. Nothing needed to begin. This was already enough. The old man remained in the chair exactly where he had been. Nothing had changed. And yet, the stillness felt deeper now, as if the room had settled even further into itself. The curtain by the window moved again. Slowly, gently. Not enough to draw attention, only enough to remind the room that the night was still present. The old man's breathing stayed calm. In, out! Each breath arrived softly and left without effort. The pauses between them stretched a little longer, resting quietly in the air. The lamp continued to glow beside him. Its light did not flicker. It did not shift. It simply remained, warming the space around it without asking to be noticed. The floor beneath the chair felt solid and unmoving. The house felt settled, as though it had decided that nothing more would happen tonight. Every wall held its place. Every corner remained silent. The old man's hands rested loosely on his knees. Fingers relaxed. No tension. No movement. Outside the window, the darkness stayed smooth and unbroken. No sudden lights. No distant sounds. The night felt wide and patient. The air drifted slowly through the room. Cool but gentle, it passed across the old man's face and continued on, carrying nothing with it. His eyes stayed open but unfocused. He was not watching the window. He was not watching the room. He was simply allowing the space to exist around him. Time moved differently here. Not forward. Not backward. It felt as though it had paused, choosing to rest alongside the old man. The lamp's soft hum blended completely into the silence. It was no longer a sound. It was part of the room itself. Breath continued. In, out! The pause followed naturally, unmeasured and calm. The curtain rose and fell once more. Barely noticeable, like the room itself breathing. The old man's shoulders sank slightly, not with effort, but with ease. His body seemed to settle deeper into the chair, fully supported, fully held. Nothing called for attention. Nothing needed a response. The house remained still. The night remained open. The old man stayed exactly where he was, allowing the quiet to hold him, allowing the night to move at its own gentle pace. This was not waiting. This was not thinking. This was simply being. And the stillness stayed. The room remained unchanged, yet the quiet within it seemed to deepen. Not suddenly. Not noticeably. It happened the way evening becomes night, slowly, without asking for attention. The old man stayed seated in his chair, facing the window. His posture was easy, natural, as if the chair had always been shaped exactly for him. His hands rested loosely on his knees, fingers slightly curled, relaxed without thought. The curtain beside the window moved again. A gentle lift. A slow fall. The movement was so soft it barely separated itself from the stillness of the room. Outside, the darkness felt wide and patient. It did not press against the glass. It did not pull the eye outward. It simply existed, calm and steady, holding the night together. The lamp continued to glow quietly. Its light did not reach far. It stayed close, warming the space around the old man, softening every shadow it touched. Nothing felt sharp. Nothing demanded focus. Breath moved through the old man without effort. In, out! Each breath followed the one before it, slow and unhurried. The pauses between them grew wider, like open spaces where nothing needed to happen. The house felt settled, as if it had gently exhaled and decided to rest. Walls held their place. The floor felt steady beneath the chair. No sounds traveled through the rooms. No doors shifted. Everything remained exactly as it was. The old man's eyes stayed open, though they rested without focus. He was not watching the night. He was not thinking about the room. His awareness felt soft, spread evenly, touching nothing directly. Time no longer felt important. Moments did not line up. They simply passed, one blending into the next, smooth and unmeasured. The air moved lightly across the room. Cool, gentle, comfortable. It brushed past the old man's face and moved on, carrying no sound with it. The lamp gave off a faint hum, barely there. Not a noise to listen to, just another part of the quiet, blending seamlessly with the stillness. The old man's shoulders lowered slightly. Not because he chose to relax. They simply settled, as if they had found the position they had been looking for all along. The curtain rose and fell again, slow, unhurried, like a breath taken by the room itself. Nothing interrupted the calm. No thought formed clearly enough to linger. No sensation asked for attention. The old man remained present, held gently by the chair, the room, and the quiet night beyond the window. There was no need to move, no reason to adjust. Everything felt complete exactly as it was. Breath continued. In, out! The pause followed, wide and easy. The night settled even deeper, wrapping the room in a calm that felt steady and endless. And the old man, still seated by the quiet window, allowed himself to rest within it. Without effort, without expectation, without any need for change. The quiet inside the house felt fuller now, not heavier, just more complete, as if every sound that could have existed had gently decided not to. The old man remained in his chair by the window. He had not shifted. He had not adjusted his posture. And yet his body felt even more settled, as if the chair had softened beneath him, shaping itself perfectly around his stillness. The curtain moved again, slower this time. It lifted just enough to catch the lamp's glow, then drifted back down, returning the light to its quiet place in the room. The movement was calm, unhurried, and effortless. Outside, the night remained unchanged. No lights appeared. No shadows moved. The darkness felt smooth and wide, stretching far beyond the window without pressing in. The lamp stayed steady. Its glow was warm and gentle, touching the edges of the room without reaching too far. The shadows it created were soft, almost invisible, blending into the walls instead of standing apart. Breath moved through the old man naturally. In, out! Each breath flowed without thought, without pause for control. The spaces between breaths widened, filling the room with quiet patience. The house seemed to respond, not by moving, not by making sound, but by settling further, as if it were listening to the rhythm of his breathing and matching it. The floor beneath the chair felt solid and calm. The walls held steady. Nothing creaked. Nothing shifted. The entire house felt as though it had gently held its breath, choosing stillness over motion. The old man's hands rested loosely on his knees. His fingers remained relaxed, slightly curved, free of tension. There was no need to move them. They were already at rest. His eyes stayed open but unfocused. He was not watching the curtain. He was not watching the window. He was simply allowing the scene to remain exactly as it was. Time felt distant. Moments no longer lined up in a straight path. They softened, blending together, creating a gentle sense of continuity rather than progression. The air passed slowly through the room. Cool enough to be refreshing, warm enough to be comfortable. It touched the old man's face lightly and continued on, leaving no trace behind. The faint hum of the lamp blended into the silence completely. It was no longer something to hear. It had become part of the quiet itself. The old man's shoulders sank just a little more, settling deeper into ease. Not through effort, not through intention. They simply found their place. The curtain lifted and fell once more. Slow, smooth, almost synchronized with his breathing. Nothing interrupted the calm. No thought formed clearly enough to remain. No sensation rose high enough to demand attention. The old man stayed where he was, held gently by the chair, the quiet house, and the steady night beyond the window. There was no need to change anything. Everything already felt complete. Breath continued. In, out! The pause followed, wide and unbroken. And the house? The quiet did not deepen suddenly. It widened, like a calm surface spreading gently outward, touching every corner of the room without changing its shape. The old man remained in the chair by the window. He felt supported from every side, though nothing pressed against him. The chair, the floor, the air, everything seemed to hold him without effort. The curtain lifted again, slower than before. It caught the soft glow of the lamp for a moment, then released it, letting the light return to its quiet place. The movement felt natural, as if it had always been part of the night. Breath continued to move through the old man. In, out! Each breath arrived gently and left without resistance. The pauses between them grew wider, calm and open, like spaces where nothing needed to happen. The lamp's glow felt warmer now, though it had not changed. Its light did not reach far. It stayed close, wrapping the room in a gentle sense of comfort rather than illumination. The house remained still, not silent in a fragile way, silent in a steady, settled way. Walls held their place. The floor remained firm beneath the chair. No sounds traveled through the rooms. The old man's hands rested loosely on his knees. His fingers felt light, almost distant, as if they belonged to the quiet rather than to him. There was no tension left to release. His eyes stayed open, though awareness had softened. He was no longer focused on the window or the room. His attention seemed to spread evenly, touching everything lightly without settling anywhere. Time felt wide and slow. Moments no longer felt separate. They flowed together, smooth and unbroken, like a single gentle stretch of calm. The air moved through the room again. Cool, steady, and comfortable. It brushed against the old man's face and passed on, leaving only the faintest sense of movement behind. The lamp's hum blended fully into the stillness. It was no longer a sound to notice. It was simply part of the room's presence. The old man's shoulders settled further, sinking into ease. Not by choice. Not by effort. They simply rested where they were meant to be. The curtain rose and fell once more. Slow. Unhurried. Almost matching the rhythm of his breathing. Nothing asked for attention. No thought rose clearly enough to remain. No sensation grew sharp enough to interrupt the calm. The old man remained exactly where he was, held gently by the chair, the quiet house, and the wide, patient night beyond the window. There was no need to move. No need to adjust. Everything felt steady and complete. Breath continued. In, out! The pause followed, wide and soft. And as the quiet grew wider, filling the room without effort, the old man allowed himself to rest even more deeply within it. Supported, unhurried, and perfectly still. The quiet had spread so evenly that it no longer felt like something surrounding the room. It felt like something the room itself had become. The old man remained seated by the window. He did not shift. He did not adjust. And yet his body felt lighter now, as if the boundaries that once defined it had softened and begun to fade. Breath continued, slow and effortless. In, out! The pause followed naturally, wide and unmeasured. There was no need to follow the breath. It moved on its own, steady and calm. The chair beneath him felt less solid, not unstable, just less noticeable. Its shape blended into the stillness, supporting him without asking to be felt. The floor, the air, the walls, all seemed to share the same gentle roll. The curtain lifted and fell again, slower than before. The movement was barely there, like a memory of motion rather than motion itself. The lamp's glow touched the fabric softly, then released it, returning the room to its gentle balance. The old man's hands rested loosely on his knees. Fingers felt distant, as though they belonged more to the quiet than to him. There was no tension, no weight, no reason to move. His shoulders had settled completely. Not lowered, not dropped, simply resting in the place they had been searching for all along. The air moved through the room with a steady calm. Cool, gentle, and consistent. It brushed past his face and continued on, leaving behind only a faint sense of comfort. Time felt even wider now. Moments no longer passed. They rested. One gentle pause flowed into the next, without edges, without direction. The lamp's faint hum had disappeared into the silence entirely. It was no longer sound. It was part of the quiet fabric of the room. The old man's eyes remained open, but awareness had softened further. He was no longer aware of looking. He was simply present, floating lightly in the space where the room and the night met. The house felt steady and calm, not listening, not responding, simply holding its place quietly and completely. Breath continued. In, out! Pause. The sense of weight in the old man's body thinned, not lifting. Not drifting away, just becoming less defined, as if the body no longer needed to announce where it ended. The curtain moved once more. So softly it almost didn't happen. The window remained open to the night, and the night remained patient and still. Nothing interrupted the calm. No thought formed clearly enough to remain. No sensation grew sharp enough to ask for attention. The old man stayed exactly where he was, supported by the chair, the room, and the quiet night beyond. There was no need to hold himself. Nothing required effort. Breath continued. In, out! The pause followed, long and gentle. And as the body forgot its edges, the quiet held everything together. Soft, wide, and endlessly calm. The quiet no longer felt like something around the room. It felt like the room itself had become quiet, through and through, without edges or contrast. The old man remained by the window, though the sense of by the window had softened. Distance felt irrelevant now. Near and far had blended into the same gentle presence. Breath continued to move on its own. In, out! Pause. Each cycle flowed into the next without effort, without instruction. There was nothing to follow, nothing to manage. The chair beneath him seemed to disappear into comfort. Not gone, just unnecessary to notice. Support existed without sensation, steady and reliable. The lamp's warmth lingered without light. Shadows no longer separated themselves from the walls. Everything shared the same soft tone, the same gentle stillness. The curtain lifted again, almost imagined rather than seen. A slow rise, a slow fall. The movement felt less like fabric and more like the night itself breathing. The old man's hands rested where they had been for a long time. Fingers felt light, distant, unimportant. They required no attention. They belonged to the calm now. His shoulders, his back, his neck, each had released any remaining effort. Not intentionally, not deliberately. They had simply stopped holding. Time felt open and wide. There was no sense of waiting for the next moment. Each moment felt complete as it was, needing nothing more. The air passed gently through the room again. Cool, steady, familiar. It moved across his face and continued on, leaving behind only comfort. The house felt present without activity. Walls, floor, ceiling, everything remained exactly where it was, without sound, without shift. The stillness felt dependable. The old man's eyes remained open, yet awareness had softened further. Seeing no longer meant looking. It meant resting quietly within the space. Breath continued. In, out! Pause. The sense of body continued to thin, not fading away, just becoming less defined, like mist resting gently over calm water. The night outside the window felt vast and patient, not calling, not moving, simply existing wide and unbroken. Nothing changed, and nothing needed to. The old man stayed exactly where he was, supported without effort, present without thought. The room held him. The night held the room, and the calm held everything together. Breath continued. In, out! Pause. The calm no longer needed shape. It no longer needed boundaries. It simply was. Soft, steady, and endlessly present. The calm had settled so deeply that it no longer felt noticeable. It felt normal, natural, as if this was how the room had always been meant to exist. The old man remained where he was, though the idea of remaining felt less important now. There was no sense of effort holding him in place. He was simply there, supported without awareness. Breath continued gently. In, out. Pause. Each movement flowed without direction, without intention. There was nothing to adjust, nothing to correct. The chair, the floor, the walls all felt distant, though not gone. They existed quietly, without asking to be felt. Support was present, steady and unquestioned. The lamp's warmth lingered in the room like a memory. Light itself no longer mattered. Only the sense of gentle comfort remained. The curtain moved again, or perhaps it did not. The difference was no longer clear. Movement and stillness had begun to feel the same. The old man's hands rested lightly, fingers relaxed and forgotten. They no longer felt like hands. They were simply part of the calm. His shoulders and back remained loose and settled. No muscles held tension. No part of the body felt separate from the quiet that filled the room. Time felt distant and wide. Moments no longer arrived one after another. They seemed to overlap, blending into a continuous, unbroken presence. The air moved gently across the room. Cool. Comfortable. It touched his face lightly and moved on, leaving behind only softness. The house felt steady and reliable. Nothing shifted. Nothing creaked. It felt as though the entire structure had relaxed, settling into rest alongside him. The old man's eyes remained open, though awareness drifted gently behind them. Seeing felt optional now. Attention no longer needed a place to rest. Breath continued. In, out. Pause. The sense of body became lighter still. Edges softened further. Weight felt evenly distributed, no longer gathering anywhere in particular. The night outside the window felt vast and distant, not separate. Just quietly present like a deep, unmoving backdrop. Nothing asked for thought. Nothing invited reaction. Everything existed without demand. The old man remained, gently held by the quiet room and the steady night beyond. There was no need to move. No need to change position. Everything already felt complete. Breath continued. In, out. Pause. And as awareness began to drift softly, naturally, the calm carried everything forward. Slowly, evenly, and without edges. The calm had become so familiar that it no longer felt like calm. It felt like the natural state of the room. Like something that had always been there, waiting quietly. The old man remained by the window, though the idea of by had softened. Position felt unimportant now. Near and far had blended into the same gentle presence. Breath continued, slow and effortless. In, out. Pause. The pause between breaths felt wider than before, not empty, but full. Full of quiet, full of ease. The chair beneath him no longer asked to be noticed. Support existed without sensation. The floor, the walls, the air, all played the same quiet role, steady and reliable. The lamp's warmth lingered without shape or source. Light had dissolved into comfort. Shadows no longer separated themselves from the room. The curtain may have moved again, or it may not have. The difference no longer mattered. Movement and stillness had merged into the same soft experience. The old man's hands rested where they had been for a long time. Fingers felt distant, unimportant. They required no awareness. They were already at rest. His shoulders, neck, and back remained loose and settled. No effort remained anywhere in the body. Nothing held. Nothing resisted. Time felt spacious and slow. Moments did not pass. They rested, overlapping gently, forming a continuous stretch of quiet presence. The air moved lightly through the room. Cool. Comfortable. It brushed his face and continued on, leaving behind only softness. The house felt deeply settled now. Walls and floor remained unmoving. No sounds traveled. No changes occurred. The stillness felt dependable and complete. The old man's eyes remained open, yet awareness drifted further inward. Seeing felt distant. Attention no longer needed a place to land. Breath continued. In, out. Pause. The sense of body softened even more. Edges blurred. Weight spread evenly, thinning until it no longer gathered anywhere. The night outside the window felt wide and patient. Not separate. Not distant. Simply present like a quiet backdrop that asked for nothing. Nothing needed thought. Nothing required response. Everything existed exactly as it was meant to. The old man remained, gently held by the room, the house, and the wide night beyond. There was no need to move. No need to adjust. Everything felt complete. Breath continued. In, out. Pause. And within the space between breaths, wide, quiet, and unbroken, awareness rested softly, drifting without effort, carried gently toward deeper and deeper rest. The pause after the breath began to stretch, not longer in time, wider in feeling. The old man no longer noticed the moment when breathing started again. It simply happened, like a tide that had learned its own rhythm. The room felt farther away now. Not gone, just softened, as if viewed through a thin veil of calm. Edges continued to blur. The outline of the body became gentle, uncertain, unnecessary. Awareness no longer needed to know where the body ended. The chair, the floor, the walls, they existed without calling attention. Support was present, silent, complete. The old man's thoughts slowed until they barely resembled thoughts. They arrived as faint impressions, then faded before forming words. Nothing lingered long enough to matter. Silence filled the spaces between impressions. Not an empty silence, a warm holding quiet. The light in the room felt dimmer now, though it may not have changed. Brightness softened. Contrast dissolved. Everything rested in the same gentle tone. The window no longer framed the night. The night seemed to move inward instead, settling calmly through the room, wrapping everything in a steady, peaceful presence. Breath moved in its own time. In, out. The pause stretched softly like a slow exhale that never rushed to end. The old man's face felt smooth and relaxed. Jaw loose, eyes heavy yet open. Blinking slowed until even blinking felt optional. Time no longer formed a line. There was no before, no after. Only a continuous unbroken now. Sounds, if they existed at all, arrived from very far away. Muted, gentle, unimportant. The house felt deeply asleep, even if no one else rested inside it. Its stillness felt ancient, practiced, and safe. The old man did not follow thoughts anymore. He allowed them to pass without attention, like clouds drifting across a quiet sky, unnoticed and unnamed. The body felt lighter. Weight thinned and spread. Pressure disappeared. There was a sense of floating, not upward, not downward, just gently suspended in comfort. Breath continued. In, out. Pause. With each pause, awareness drifted deeper, as if sinking slowly into a warm, endless softness. The room faded further into the background. Details no longer asked to be seen. They existed without form. The old man remained calm and present, yet gently letting go of the need to remain aware. Nothing needed to happen. Nothing was expected. Rest unfolded naturally. And as breathing continued its quiet rhythm, awareness softened even more, sliding effortlessly toward the edge where waking gently dissolves into sleep. Something subtle began to change. Not suddenly, not clearly. The old man did not notice the moment when thoughts stopped behaving like thoughts. They softened first, then loosened, then quietly lost their edges. Images appeared without asking permission. Not sharp images, more like feelings that suggested a shape. A sense of space opened. Wide, unmeasured, comfortable. The room was no longer important. It remained somewhere behind awareness, but attention drifted elsewhere, into a place that did not require effort to enter. Breathing continued, slow and steady, but it no longer anchored awareness. It simply existed in the background, like a distant tide. The old man felt as though he were resting inside a memory, though no specific memory formed. There was a sense of warmth, a familiarity without details, like remembering how safety feels, without remembering where it came from. Time moved differently here. Moments stretched and folded into each other. Nothing needed sequence. A quiet path seemed to appear, not seen but felt. It did not lead anywhere specific. It simply existed, inviting rest. The old man did not walk the path. He floated along it, without effort, without direction. Soft impressions passed by. A suggestion of evening light. The idea of a calm sky. The feeling of sitting somewhere peaceful, long ago. None of it asked to be understood. The body felt distant now. Present but no longer demanding attention. Weightless. Supported. Awareness drifted gently, like a leaf carried by still air. There was no need to hold on to anything. No need to remember. No need to decide. The mind opened and closed softly, like a door that no longer needed guarding. Images came and went. Not stories. Not scenes. Just fragments. Harmless, slow, and soothing. The old man felt deeply safe here. Not because of something happening, but because nothing was required. Silence wrapped around awareness. Not empty, but full of rest. Breathing remained calm. In, out, pause. Each pause felt longer than the last, as though awareness were gently sinking deeper, layer by layer. Thoughts no longer formed sentences. They dissolved before becoming words. Only sensations remained, soft, distant, and kind. The old man drifted further into this quiet space, where waking gently fades, and sleep begins to take its natural shape. Nothing pulled him back. Nothing pushed him forward. He simply rested, balanced perfectly between knowing and dreaming, floating calmly toward deeper sleep. The quiet had become a soft current. It carried everything forward, yet went nowhere in particular. The old man remained seated, though the idea of sitting felt less solid. He did not notice the body anymore. It existed, but it was no longer separate from the calm around it. Breath continued in and out, but it no longer defined presence. It was simply another rhythm, one among many in the soft, endless quiet. The room felt distant, like a memory half remembered. Walls, floor, ceiling, they existed, but their edges had blurred into the gentle flow of awareness. Soft shapes passed at the edge of vision. Not clear, not demanding attention. Perhaps a tree. Perhaps the curve of a cloud. Perhaps nothing at all. The old man did not reach for them. He did not name them. They simply were. He floated alongside, weightless. Time continued to lose meaning. Not gone, not frozen, but layered, like threads overlapping without tension. The curtain lifted and fell once more, almost imagined. The night beyond the window no longer felt distant. It seeped in, blending seamlessly with the room, with the chair, with the old man. Breathing continued effortless. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched wider, like the space between heartbeats, like the quiet between waves. The old man's thoughts had mostly disappeared. Those that remained were soft fragments, a suggestion of warmth, a hint of movement, a vague echo of memory. He felt suspended, not floating above, not sinking below, just suspended in a soft, infinite calm. The lamp's glow had melted into the air. Light and shadow were no longer separate. Only warmth and softness remained. Sounds from the outside world, if they existed, felt far away, distant, unimportant. They could not disturb this gentle drift. The old man's eyes remained open, but seeing had softened. Shapes appeared without edges, then dissolved again, as if the night itself were breathing through him. The body had become lighter, thinner, almost a suggestion rather than presence. Weight no longer pressed. No part demanded attention. Breath continued. In, out, pause. Fragments of memory, fragments of thought, drifted in and out, like clouds carried by windless air. Nothing needed to be remembered. Nothing needed to be done. Everything was complete, and as awareness floated further, deeper layers of calm settled over him, softly, endlessly, until the line between dreaming and waking began to blur. The old man remained, held gently by the quiet, by the room, by the patient night outside, and by the soft, unbroken rhythm of being itself. The gentle quiet that had surrounded him now became a current, carrying the old man effortlessly deeper into rest. Breath continued its calm rhythm, but it no longer measured time. It was simply another gentle movement in the ocean of stillness. The room had faded further. Edges no longer mattered. Walls, floor, ceiling. They existed only as soft suggestions, shapes without force or definition. The lamp's glow was now memory rather than light. It warmed the air in a way that could be felt but not seen. Shadows no longer separated themselves from the corners. Everything merged into the same gentle tone of calm. The curtain's movements had slowed, almost dissolving entirely into the soft darkness beyond the window. The night outside no longer felt distant. It was inside him now, blending with each inhalation and exhalation. The old man's body had become light, weightless in its rest. Limbs, head, torso, none demanded attention. All were soft, supported by the invisible calm that carried him effortlessly. Thoughts had largely ceased. What remained were soft impressions, fleeting feelings rather than shapes or words. Hints of warmth, comfort, and safety passed by, leaving no mark, demanding no response. Time had lost its meaning entirely. Moments did not flow. They merged, folded over each other, creating a continuous, unbroken space for rest. Breath continued. In, out, pause. Each pause grew wider, carrying awareness deeper into gentle unconsciousness. The old man's eyes, though open moments ago, were now heavy. Blinking slowed to nothing. Vision itself began to dissolve, leaving only a soft, diffuse awareness of presence. The boundary between self and environment softened. Where the body ended and the room began was impossible to distinguish. Where the room ended and the night began was equally unclear. Awareness began to float, untethered, like a leaf carried by calm, unseen currents. The faintest fragments of memory drifted by. Not stories, not images that needed recognition. Just soft, ungraspable shapes, comforting in their gentle vagueness. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The calm expanded, filling every corner of perception, smoothing every edge of thought, dissolving every sense of strain. The old man remained, held in the arms of the quiet, supported by the soft, unbroken rhythm of night, and carried effortlessly into the welcoming depths of sleep. Nothing demanded effort, nothing demanded awareness. Everything simply existed, soft, slow, and infinitely gentle. And as the rhythm of breathing continued, awareness slipped further into rest, softly, evenly, and completely surrendered to the calm that surrounded him. The night had become thicker, not with weight, but with a soft, enveloping presence. The old man floated within it, though floating was no longer a movement. It was simply a state of being, effortless and infinite. Breath moved silently. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched into the surrounding calm, becoming part of the gentle current that carried him further into sleep. The room had disappeared entirely. Only softness remained. No edges, no walls, no ceiling. Even the memory of light had faded, leaving only warmth and quiet presence. Fragments of thought appeared, but they were nothing more than soft ripples, hints of past moments, like the color of a sky remembered, or the feeling of leaves brushing fingertips long ago. None demanded recognition. None could anchor attention. The old man's body had become entirely diffuse. Weight had vanished. Limbs were suggestions rather than reality. Awareness had thinned into a gentle haze, soft and ungraspable. Time no longer mattered. There was no before, no after. Only a continuous, unbroken now. Expanding slowly, stretching wide, inviting rest without asking for effort. The night beyond the window, though invisible, seeped in like a tide of calm. It wrapped everything in the same gentle, protective rhythm. Shadows and light had melted into one presence. Nothing could disturb it. Nothing could penetrate it. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The pause stretched further, pulling awareness gently into deeper recesses of rest. The old man's eyes, though open once, were now heavy and unfocused. Shapes appeared without edges, then dissolved as though never there. Even vision no longer needed to exist. The mind floated freely, untethered. Images, memories, and fragments drifted by like leaves on a calm river. None required understanding. None required response. They were soft currents moving with the quiet that held everything together. The body, the room, the night, the self, all had merged into a single flow. It was impossible to separate one from the other. Everything existed as one soft, infinite presence. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The quiet expanded deeper and wider, carrying awareness into spaces beyond memory, beyond thought, beyond effort. The old man rested entirely, supported not by walls or chair, but by the calm itself, a calm that held everything, softly, completely, without judgment or expectation. And as he sank further, the currents of the dream enveloped him fully, whispering in soft tones of warmth and safety, leading gently, inevitably, into the heart of sleep itself. The quiet had transformed into a gentle current, flowing not around the old man, but through him, through everything, soft and endless. The room no longer existed. Even the memory of walls, floor, or ceiling had faded. There was only a soft, infinite presence, a calm that was everywhere and nowhere at once. Breath moved quietly, like a rhythm the body no longer needed to notice. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched wide, like a space between clouds floating in a dream sky. Images drifted at the edge of awareness, but they were no longer shapes or stories. They were soft impressions, vague echoes of warmth, traces of light. The feeling of comfort remembered but unnamed. The old man's body had dissolved further. Limbs, head, torso, all were suggestions of presence, weightless, effortless, ungraspable. Time had ceased to matter. There was no sequence, no past or future, only the endless flow of gentle now, softly carrying him deeper into rest. The currents of dream began to move with subtle rhythm. Hints of movement appeared, like a faint wind across a calm lake, like the gentle brush of leaves against skin long forgotten. Nothing needed attention. Nothing demanded recognition. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The pause stretched wider than before, pulling awareness gently into deeper layers of sleep. Shapes and fragments appeared briefly, then dissolved into soft currents. A memory of walking, a feeling of warmth on the skin, a faint echo of laughter. All passed without grasping, all left only a sense of calm behind. The old man floated, untethered, not moving, not still, simply carried by the calm itself. The boundaries between self and environment, between body and space, between dream and rest, had melted entirely. The night beyond the window, though unseen, was felt as an endless tide of safety and softness. It wrapped around him, into him, through him, holding everything in perfect balance. Thoughts had vanished. Even awareness of thought had faded. There was nothing to follow, nothing to control. Everything existed as one soft, unbroken current of calm. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The old man rested completely, held not by anything physical, but by the gentle flow of dream and night, by the calm that had become him, by the quiet that had become everything. And as the currents of dream carried him deeper, he drifted further, slowly, softly, and entirely into the endless heart of sleep. The calm had expanded completely, enveloping the old man in a gentle, infinite presence. He no longer felt separate from anything. Room, night, body, breath, all were one soft flow of quiet. The currents of the dream had thickened, softly carrying awareness through spaces that had no edges, no ceiling, no floor, no horizon. Everything was everywhere at once. Breath moved gently. In, out, pause. The pause stretched like a soft tide, pulling consciousness into the depths of a quiet sea. Faint impressions drifted past. Not memories, not shapes, but hints of experiences, the warmth of a sunbeam long forgotten, the gentle sway of a tree, the quiet murmur of water, all passed without needing attention. The old man floated within these currents. He did not move. He did not resist. He did not anchor himself. He was carried softly, weightless, entirely supported by the calm. Time had disappeared completely. There was no before, no after. Only the continuous, unbroken now, wide and soft and infinite. Shapes of dream appeared and dissolved without notice. A faint ripple of light, a soft curve of color, a sensation of floating, all gentle, ungraspable, and fleeting. The body had dissolved entirely. Limbs, torso, head, only faint suggestions of presence remained. Weightlessness had become complete. Even the sense of self had softened. The night beyond the window was no longer outside. It was inside him, merging seamlessly with the currents of calm and dream. The quiet held him firmly yet invisibly, a perfect cradle of rest. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The pause widened further, deepening the drift. Awareness moved like a leaf on a still river. No effort, no thought, no boundary, just the gentle flow of everything. Faint echoes of feeling passed by. Comfort, safety, light warmth, soft sounds like distant waves, all dissolved into the calm before it could solidify. The old man rested completely, held by the quiet, cradled by the currents of dream, supported by nothing and everything at once. The line between waking and dreaming had vanished. Everything existed as one soft, infinite current, carrying him effortlessly, slowly, gently, into the heart of deep, dream-filled sleep. And as the currents flowed on, all edges disappeared. All effort vanished. All awareness softened into the endless calm of night and dream. The dream currents had settled into a gentle, endless rhythm. The old man floated within it, but floating was no longer movement. It was simply being soft and unbroken. Breath continued effortless. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched wider than the last, pulling awareness gently, without effort, deeper into the calm. Shapes drifted at the edge of perception, but they no longer demanded recognition. A shadow of a tree, a hint of water, a ripple of light, all soft, fleeting, and ungraspable. The old man's body had dissolved further. Limbs, head, torso. Only suggestions remained. Weightless. Light. Unnecessary. Time no longer existed. Moments overlapped and merged, folding into one another, creating a continuous, soft expanse of presence. The currents of the dream shifted subtly. Not violently, not sharply, but like gentle waves in a quiet sea, softly rearranging impressions, inviting deeper relaxation, pulling the mind further from waking. The night beyond the window was no longer distant. It merged with the room, with the currents, with the old man, becoming a single seamless experience of calm. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The pause deepened the drift. Faint, fleeting fragments of memory appeared. A sunbeam long ago, the curve of a path through grass, a sound carried by wind. They appeared and dissolved instantly, leaving only the sensation of warmth, safety, and stillness. Awareness thinned further, no longer anchored to the body, the room, or even the self. Everything blended into the currents of calm and dream. The old man had become one with it. Soft impressions shifted like clouds. Some felt familiar, some felt strange. All were gentle, unthreatening, and soft. All carried him further into sleep. The body, if it existed at all, was weightless, supported entirely by the calm. There was no strain, no tension, no effort. Breath continued. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched wider, pulling him into deeper layers of subconscious rest. The currents of the dream flowed endlessly. Edges disappeared. Effort dissolved. Thoughts thinned to whispers. Awareness softened into unbroken calm. The old man rested fully, carried gently, weightlessly, into the deepest reaches of sleep, where dream, body, and night became one. And as the currents flowed on, he drifted softly, gently, entirely, into the heart of the subconscious, safe, warm, and unbroken. The currents of dream had carried the old man far beyond the edges of the waking world. Here there was no room. No walls, no floor, no ceiling, only soft, endless calm. Breath moved gently, yet it no longer anchored him. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched wider, deeper, dissolving the last traces of tension. Shapes appeared and faded like mist, hints of light, curves of memory, faint whispers of warmth. None demanded recognition. None needed attention. All existed only as gentle impressions, soft currents flowing through him. The old man's body had fully melted into weightless presence. Limbs, torso, head, all dissolved into the currents. No edges remained. No tension lingered. Only floating serenity. Time no longer existed. Moments overlapped and blended. There was only the eternal now, soft, unbroken, infinite. The currents shifted subtly, like waves over a vast, still ocean. They carried impressions, soft feelings, tiny echoes of memory, all gentle, all ungraspable, pulling awareness effortlessly deeper. The night beyond, once separate, was now inseparable from him. The calm of the room, the flow of dreams, the warmth and safety of night, all merged into one seamless experience. Breath continued. In, out, pause. Each pause pulled him further into the depths, layer by layer, softly, naturally, without effort. The old man drifted freely, not moving, not still, simply existing. Carried by the currents of calm and dream, faint impressions passed like clouds across a boundless sky, some familiar, some strange, all gentle, unthreatening, soft. They guided him deeper, into layers of sleep where thought no longer existed. The body, if it existed at all, was entirely weightless. No strain, no tension, no need for control. Only perfect, effortless rest. Awareness thinned further, softened into the currents, until even the self became a faint suggestion, floating gently in the vastness of calm. Breath continued. In, out, pause. The pause stretched endlessly, allowing awareness to dissolve fully into the gentle, unbroken serenity of dream. The old man rested completely, carried effortlessly, softly, weightlessly, through the deepest layers of sleep. And as the currents continued to flow, everything, dream, night, body, awareness, existed as one soft, infinite presence. The currents of dream carried the old man far beyond the edges of waking thought. Time, room, body, even light had softened into one endless calm. Breath moved quietly. In, out, pause. Each pause stretched wide, pulling awareness gently deeper into the stillness. The chair, walls, ceiling, all had melted into soft, infinite presence. The old man's body felt weightless, dissolved entirely into the gentle flow. No tension remained. Every cell, every limb, every thought rested effortlessly, supported by the currents of calm surrounding him. Fragments of memory floated by. Warm sunlight, distant laughter, the feel of a soft breeze. None required attention. All dissolved, leaving only serenity. Time had lost meaning. Moments merged into one continuous soft now, inviting complete surrender to the gentle rhythm of breath. The endless calm of dream. Awareness thinned further. Thoughts faded. Even the sense of self softened, merging into the flow. The currents of calm carried him weightlessly, through layers of deep, restorative sleep. Shapes appeared and disappeared like mist. Soft impressions of warmth, light, and comfort. They passed without needing recognition, leaving only unbroken serenity. The old man rested fully. Body, mind, breath, and dream merged as one. The currents of calm held him entirely. Softly, slowly, effortlessly. The world outside no longer existed. There was only infinite presence, holding him, carrying him, allowing him to sink completely into the heart of deep, perfect sleep. In this space, nothing needed to happen. No thought, no action, no memory. Only the gentle, unbroken flow of dream and calm remained. And the old man drifted endlessly, safe, warm, weightless, fully surrendered to sleep.